I'm Cameron Lavelle, Education Specialist at yourparenthelp.com. I teach parents how to teach their own children and provide a high quality education. And this week we are going to talk about some math, basic, foundational, how to teach math, regardless of what age, what grade, what subject, or what topic within math. The basic order that you want to go in. Concrete, pictorial, abstract. Every single time. We tend to do this really well with tiny children and are like, oh, count these out. How many are there? Oh, and then sometimes we skip from then to like write the number, which is kind of going from concrete, physical object, concrete, to abstract, just writing a number down. The older kids get, the more we just start with abstract. And then kids are super confused. And it just compounds. The more you try to push through the confusion with more abstraction, you can get them to do it in the moment, usually. And then they go on to the next grade, and then they're even more confused. And then you're trying again. And then they get into high school, and they're trying to learn complex algebra, and they're like, none of this makes any sense. And it's because we've pushed them through with just working on abstract shortcuts, and we haven't gone through to make sure they really understand the concepts behind it. So, no matter what you're teaching, concrete, physically touching something. When they're little and we're just working on counting, they have a pile of blocks and they're counting all the blocks. They have a pile of Cheerios and they're counting all the Cheerios. They have a pile, whatever. They're counting it all out. They're, touching, manipulating, moving objects. Then they're counting a picture. There's, 5 oranges on the picture. They're counting the 5 oranges, touching, looking, counting in a picture. So they've gone from something they can touch and actually move into a new pile to a picture. And sometimes we teach them to cross out the object as they're counting that in that picture. Sometimes they're good at just counting, or they start to subitize, which means that they can look at it and know how much it is. I had a fantastic kindergartner once, and he looked at it and he would say, well, it's 3 here and 2 here, so it's 5. And he was just great at that. Subitizing. That was his strength. There's other kids that they get confused really quickly and they need something to remind them which ones they've counted, which order they've gone in. And it's just practice. The more they do it, the better they're going to get at it. And that particular child, he just had a lot of practice with it. So, concrete, pictorial, and then abstract. Then we can get into looking at numbers, symbols. So now we're talking about adding. We have objects here. We're counting these ones, and we have a pile here, and we're counting both, seeing how much they are all together. There's 5 here, and there's 4 here. We count them together. Oh, it's 9. I've moved them around. I've physically touched them. Concrete. Then I've gone on to abstract. There's a picture of 5 here, and there's 4 here, and I counted them, and all together I counted 9. Then I go into abstract. I write down a 5. I write down the symbol plus. I write down a 4. I write down the symbol equals. And I write down the number 9. All abstract. There's no physical thing that they can touch. If you've looked at touch math, this isn't really a pro or con. They kind of integrate the pictorial with the abstract by putting touch points on a number so that the 5 actually has 5 touch points. So you're kind of combining those two, which can help some kids gain number sense. Again, I'm not saying go by touch math, but you can look into it if you're interested. I'm not super for it or super against it at all. Okay, if we were talking about something more advanced like multiplication, concrete, I would have physical objects that I'm putting into groups or buckets Maybe I've got 5 blocks that are in each of 3 buckets. 5 blocks here, 5 blocks here, 5 blocks here. Or maybe I've put them on Cheerios. We'll go back to Cheerios. I've got 5 Cheerios in 3 bowls. 5, 5, 5. Physically seeing it. Now, you can't just do groups with multiplication. You also need to do some kind of a grid. That's where you could actually get out a physical measuring tape and measure, oh, this is 5 inches by 3 inches. And if I draw the lines here, look how many square inches there are. You can get the, there's like 1-inch tiles. You can cut them out of paper and actually lay them out, physically showing, look, there's 15 1-inch squares in this space. And then you can say that's the area of this space is 15 square inches. And they're physically seeing that multiplication happening. It's making sense to them. And you can do that at a young age. We tend to think of that as a more advanced skill, but I would say a lot of times a 2nd grader can do it. It just depends on where they're at, but don't be afraid of it. If they're understanding counting, then they can go into that. Multiplication is not about memorization. I know, it can be hard for people. Multiplication is not about memorization. You don't have to memorize your multiplication facts, and I would suggest you not focus on the memorization until your child understands what multiplication is. It is repeated addition. It is that there's 5, 5, and 5, or 3, 3, 3, 3, 3. It's a repeated addition, or it's a grid, an area. So it is not a memorization. And if your child struggles with memorizing facts, you can teach them a lot of tricks, and we will go into a video with that later. I will teach you how to work on the memorization of multiplication facts and how to work around the difficulty with memorizing it. The other one I wanted to talk about is, so that was the concrete. The pictorial, you can get a piece of grid paper and draw out that grid that I was talking about, a 5 by 3. You can draw out the groups. So again, trying to do both a grid area and a groups version of multiplication. The converse with division, you'd do very similar. You'd start with 15 Cheerios and 3 bowls and divide them in. But also make sure you do both ways. Say, okay, I want 5 in each bowl. How many bowls do I need? Well, if I put 5 here, 5 here, 5 here. Oh, we didn't need those other bowls. We only needed these 3 bowls, right? Okay, then the abstract is just using the 5 times 3. With that multiplication, for some reason, we have the x that means times, and we have the little dot that means times, and then we have parentheses where if you have 3 parentheses 4, that means times. So it's like the English language that's super confusing. Why do we have 3 different ways to show multiplication? I don't know, we do. And then division, you've got a line with 2 dots. You've got the, I don't know what it's called, specific the division symbol, but I'm sure it has a special name because everything seems to. You have fraction bar, right? You've got 3 different ways to show division. Why? I don't know. We just do. Okay. So then if we get into fractions, speaking of, fractions are a piece of something, so it could be a part of a group. So maybe one of those Cheerios out of 15 is blue. You just dyed it to make it fun, interesting. You've got a bunch of blocks, and you're just counting what fraction of the blocks, maybe they're a bunch of different colors, what fraction of the blocks are green. There's 3 green blocks, there's 15 total, 3 out of 15. Then, if you want to take it to the next level, right? But wait, don't push things. Make sure they understand one thing before you try to complicate it. But then you could point out, well, if there's 3 out of 15, is there another way to show that? Now, if you make it really easy to start with, I would set things up so that there were 5 colors and there were 3 of each color, so that I could quickly like sort all of them and say, oh, 3 out of 15 is the same as 1 out of 5. So I would design it so that it was easy to show that initially, and once they got good at it, then they could get into more abstract where there's an uneven number, but they still know that 3 out of 15 is the same as 1 out of 5. Again, don't keep pushing it too far, but don't be afraid to push it a little bit and just see how it goes. And if they're super confused, then say, you know what, that's a super advanced concept. Good job for paying attention. High five. Let's go back to the other. Or let's move on to reading. Whatever they're ready for. And then obviously the abstract is showing with the fraction, which again, it could be like slanty, or you can write one on top of the other. Why do we have so many symbols? Okay. So, just to review really quickly, whatever math you're teaching, whatever curriculum you're choosing to use, the focus should always be concrete, pictorial, abstract. If you're using a curriculum that is jumping straight into pictorial and abstract and doesn't give you activities to do concrete, please stop. Please get some objects. Whatever objects you want to use, doesn't matter too much. The thing that matters the most is that you're using objects. You are teaching concrete before you move on to pictorial and abstract. A child needs to have their hands on it before they get into the next deeper understanding of something. And if you think they've totally got it, great. But if they start to struggle, make sure you go back, and every once in a while, go back at least to pictorial and make sure that they can still do it with pictures, because we need to make sure they still understand what it looks like. Alright, have a fabulous week. I will see you next week. I am Cameron Lavelle at yourparenthelp.com.